like to just plant things now and then we're ready. Another interesting lecture next month. We have a Japanese renowned mathematician who lectures worldwide on teaching mathematics to kids. And so it's a little outside the garden realm, but it's certainly within Japanese culture. So I'm really interested. And his wife is the Ikebana teacher here. So they're a great couple. September, John Powell will be here, the garden builder who does stuff all over the country, trained in Japan. He's gonna give a presentation here. And then next weekend, not this weekend, next weekend is our summer festival. So there's all kinds of great things happening there. I learned of Kevin from Lindsay Sterick, who gave a presentation, I think it was last year, on manga and anime, and she's like, "Oh, you need to have Kevin come and talk. He's a bonsai guy." And yeah. Lindsay's awesome. I think she just she's working toward the tenure position at U of I.
Yep, Champaign-Urbana. Yeah.
So she's awesome, and so Kevin came highly recommended. So I'm really happy to have Kevin here. We've been kind of hanging around all day talking about bonsai and gardens and such, and so really happy to have him here. So Kevin, would you please tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm originally from Oregon, so if you hear me reference my family, that's where I'm discussing from. I'm living now in Columbus, Ohio with my wife and my 1-year-old daughter named Juniper. My wife's idea on that one. I said, what about the name June? She's like, what about Juniper? I'm like, yep, signed contract, no need to talk about any more names, totally fine. They're actually in Japan right now, so they say hello and they say thank you for coming. Yes, the reason we moved to Columbus is because my wife is doing a PhD. She's a Japanese teacher from Japan, like I said, and so right now she's been there for 3 months, coming back this August, but she's been diligently working on her dissertation, which I would never want to do.
And what is her dissertation on?
Oh, how many things has it changed now? Kumi, if you're listening to this, I'm recording, by the way. I love you. No, let's see. She's studying how non-native Japanese speakers use the language in forms of trying to sound like a native speaker, or not being able to pick up certain nuances within language, as we have our own vocabulary or verbiage that some people may not know unless you're born into the culture. You can possibly learn that, but it's really hard unless you spend a good amount of time in that society, sociologically speaking, of course. Her research has never really been allocated much attention, so she's on a forefront of new engagement, and it's exciting, but a lot of work because there's nothing really to, I don't say there's not anything, but there's not a lot of things to fall back on. So she's kind of paving her own path, which we're both pretty good at that, I guess. You know? What do they call it, a power couple? I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the questions. And with this lecture today too, it'll be more of a conversation. That's how I like to do my presentations. Lectures, I'm in school for horticulture myself. I have enough lectures as it is. Just hear someone talk at you, the Charlie Brown, wah, 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 you know, that's not my style. When I engage with the crowds, I like to hear what you all have to say too, because I learn as much from you as you will me. And I want to leave here knowing more about your area or your time spent in this garden or whatever have you. And just being able to take more from that makes me think job well done for both parties, are all considered. To get started, what did you all think when you read the bio that was about this lecture? Did anybody read it? How did you perceive it?
I thought it was going to be really exciting because that's what I love. I love the fact that you can see the seasons and things that make you notice the seasons and the changes. So
that makes me very excited. Thank you for sharing that. No, really, that makes me really happy because that was to simplify and quantify what I try to do as far as my engagement with people. It's getting easier because I've been doing it now it's been on my mind for now the last 5 years. So I've been having this incubating this time at Ohio State and other places I've been, to where your response was the one I've been looking for many years. So I appreciate you offering that. But like I said, today's lecture will be, as it stated, living with the seasons, the mindful practice of being in tune with nature. What are some ideas people have when they read this or think of this? Anything? Feel free to shout out if you like. For me, what I think of this is, as you stated, just taking in consideration of that ability to see it change, but how else is that affecting us, right? And we'll discuss that as well, and in cultural things too from Japan that we can utilize here in the States, because there's a reason that they are very polite and things in that way. So like I said, a little bit about me. I know I covered a little bit already, but I will just refresh. A little bit of water, it's kind of dry here. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a student at the Ohio State University, going for my bachelor's in, sustainable plant systems. It's a nice buzzword there, but I'm focusing horticulture. I'm a bonsai practitioner. I don't know if you all had time to look, but these are some of mine. My wife says I have too many. I don't think I have enough, but you know, the teeter-totter of life. I'm a bonsai advocate. I do think there is a friendship to be made and family to be made worldwide. Because if you have trees and you love trees, you have friends anywhere you go, especially in nature. I'm a business owner, working on a third business now too. Having a daughter will, I guess, give you the gumption to keep going and get diapers. My landscape company is called Faris Landscape Design. Very small company, just me, doing a lot of design work and installations of all kinds, and maintenance and everything else. I'm also a massage therapist. I started out that in Oregon after a long bout in construction and trade work. And I will say my time spent in massage therapy has given me a different approach. I believe in how I utilize nature and the representation of mental health with that. Also, my biggest accomplishment is I'm a husband and father, like I stated earlier. This slide is some photos of the summer.
That's wonderful.
My daughter Juniper just turned 1, going on 13 in that personality she got. Ourselves in a traditional wedding, Shinto. So my lovely wife, Kumiko, called her Kumi. This is in her hometown of Aizuwakamatsu, Fukushima. Surrounded by mountains, snow about up to here. And this is about, I think, 200 years old shrine. So it's very, about 10-minute walk from the house, so not too far. Perfect day, but little known fact about kimonos. Does anybody know much about them at all? She said this is probably about 5, 6, 7 pounds of weight on top of her. Took probably a good over 5 minutes to unwrap everything. It was pretty crazy. Let's see here. So like I said, we'll be discussing nature. In that regard of that word nature, right? It brings a lot of provenance. It can bring a lot of serenity if we're in this sanctuary of space outside. Nature in our backyards, we're always surrounded by it, but do we really see it, right? Are we paying attention to it? As you stated, you know, those signals that it gives us, but what do we see? What do we do? How do we feel? Question I have, and I want to pose to you all. What is your first memory of nature or a tree? I want you to think about that for a minute. And then when you have it, if you would discuss it with your partner next to you or somebody sitting next to you, and then if you'd like to share it, that'll be a great conversation as well. So yeah, if you want to talk next to each other, you can, please.
Mine is of a willow tree, and I had a special cigar box of treasures as a child that I would take under the willow tree.
So it sounds like some good memories were brought back up, or just representation of what you liked in nature or a tree. Does anybody feel like they want to share their memory or what they discussed? Just to see what we can connect.
Well, as a young child, I discovered a beehive in a tree and got stung multiple times.
That is a learning experience. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a really big beehive there.
That's
Yeah.
exposure to nature.
I was gonna say, quick and did you get water goes fast?
Very fast.
Anybody else?
At some age, I remember that there was shade and it was cooler under a tree
Mhm.
than out in the sunlight.
Right.
When it was really hot.
Right. Have you all read that book about the, I think it's called The Giving Tree? Remember that book, right? I think more kids should read that every day because of the fact, like you stated, that shade, that's what just brought up to me. My first memory is, well, being from Oregon, I had forest in my backyard. So being on the coast, camping, fishing, all the things that a Oregonian probably would do, getting dirty at the same time and listening to your dad swear. Yeah, and I appreciate the conversation we're having, like I said, because that just creates more of a community-based approach to what we're discussing. And my goal for you at the end of this lecture, and I'll state this again, is to see how we can spread this awareness to our larger community as a whole. Topics of discussion today, the seasons, you know, what are the seasons in those ways? Seasonal cues, as you said earlier, you know, signals, we'll call them too. Living seasonally, what does that really mean for us? Or, you know, we'll look at how they do it in Japan as well, as we can be influenced that way. Nature and mental health. I know that word mental health can bring on a lot of interesting notions for people, but in this way it's not political, it's just about that idea to see how we benefit and how we can benefit even more from our time spent with nature or an established community within nature. Japanese gardens, I do believe they're nature's connection point, and we'll discuss more of why that is as well. And as you've already seen, I've already discussed bonsai as a seasonal practice, and we'll get into that as well. What are the seasons? What comes to mind when we think of each season? Anybody? Feel free to shout out.
Fruits
Temperature.
of the season.
Yeah? Yep? Yeah?
Temperature.
Temperature, yeah, yeah. Anyone else, you know, what's summer like, right? Pretty hot. Spring, kind of weird, cold, but like you have a sweater on and maybe shorts or flip-flops someday? I don't know. Put the window down at 35 because it's warm. You know, when we see spring, we think of new life, right? New approach, new leaves, new colors, everything. This is a wonderful cherry blossom vineyard. I don't know exactly where, but if you were ever or have been to Japan or ever want to go, I highly recommend going in early spring, April to March, or sorry, March to April. You'll see a beautiful amount. Jeff, you and I discussed this morning the serenity of it, really, as the simplicity of color and beauty, and just this time kind of stops, if you will, right? And just the cultural awareness of it is very, very big. Through spring in Japan, and I'll discuss this later in more detail, they have what's called ohanami, which is what we call a picnic, where they literally have tickets to create a space underneath a tree in every kind of big park in a big city, or even small towns. You have to dictate what spot you want, because you're around your friends, drinking some good drinks, food, and just spend the time underneath the trees and being represented with nature. It's pretty amazing. It's quite a humbling experience, really, too. Summer, right? Summer's hot. Look at me, I'm tan, probably a little burned in my face today because being outside all day. But with nature, what do we see? Leaves are hardening off, horticulturally speaking. Leaves are getting their waxy coating so they can sustain their growth through their new life of the season. We have new trees possibly sprouting up here, like we see in the garden here or at your own house, you know, maybe some little maples popping up. Those are signs to say, what are those gonna turn into? Maybe you can take some influence of that too, just seeing the forest through the trees approach, right? Autumn. Who here loves autumn? Yeah, right? Why do we love autumn?
The colors.
Yeah, yeah. What else? What else? Big sweaters, right?
Yes.
Hot chocolate
yes.
maybe?
Yes.
Good conversation.
The cooler weather.
Holiday movies.
Yeah.
You know, but another symptom of autumn too is, it may sound dark, not to be depressing, but death, right? The death of this new life come spring is a new way to see that preview of what's to come the next year, right? As trees connotate this emotion, or influence this emotion, I should say, of this idea where I have this and now I can let it go. Well, we can do the same, can't we? I mean, we have a lot of emotional things too, but we can also let things go, just like you let go of a bag. Like, oh, I can do that. I don't use the word relax because that just makes people more stressed. It's like, why am I not relaxing? I'm supposed to be relaxed, but I can let it go, and I won't break out in song like that Frozen movie. Don't worry, don't worry.
He does.
Like we said, since I've moved to the Midwest, it's been some of the most humbling experiences in nature in the fall time. I thought I had it made in Oregon for color. No way. You guys got a beat because of all these beautiful colors and just that mountain of fire, if you will. You know, if you go to West Virginia or any parts out there in the Poconos and things in that way, just this wall of beauty. But that also elicits those things like we discussed, you know, temperature, feeling of warmth in a big comfy sweater or underneath a blanket, maybe around a fire even too if you have a dry day, right? We discussed the death portion of it. but there are trees that will keep pushing into even later. Horticulturally, it doesn't make sense, I don't know why, but it's what it is. Winter, what do we think of with winter?
Snow,
Snow?
glistening snow.
Yeah, and it sounds like you'll get way more snow than Columbus, which you all can keep just fine.
Pretty.
What else is with winter? What do we experience in winter?
It's quieter. There's
Yeah, right?
something- yeah.
Almost like a deafening silence sometimes.
Yeah,
How does that make people feel when you have that, right?
Want to hibernate.
Yeah, right? You don't even come out and be like a snow bunny, you're like, leave me alone. I'll be the bear out the cave in the spring. Do we have time for reflection in winter? You know, if we do decide to do it, why don't we do more of it? You know, because after that, we'll call it the death of the life in fall. We should be able to allocate some time to really see the significance of these seasonal cues and changes just to promote that seasonal living. Because of the fact that winter is just naked or empty, it doesn't mean that we have to be. Because we can take that into approach and be all beautiful, right? What is the 5th season in Japan? Does anybody know? Or has anybody ever heard of this? No? So, my father-in-law, like I said, I'm in horticulture school, which is great. You know, we always want our in-laws to be happy with us, right? He told me about this, and I've heard about this before, and I thought it was maybe just a, you know, like a weird Japanese intricacy of culture and dynamic, but it's real. It's called Suyu. Unofficially the 5th season, of course. They're still the seasons we discussed here. But Japanese people call it the rainy season. Either it's 70 or 80% of Japan is forested, or even more now, because as the country's getting larger and promoting more growth, it's needing more space. So for these rains, it will rain every day from early July to mid-August. My wife is there now. She told me just the other day and even this morning that it's 95% humidity with heavy rain, and you don't go outside. It's disgusting. And it's a lot of flooding and everything. But because they have this rainy season, Suyu, is how they become so lush and green, because this promotes their availability to live seasonally. Because if they didn't have this, they wouldn't be the Japan we know. I quote my wife on that. She told me that last night. This is a very important concept, and if you were to discuss this with certain people who are from Japan that have spent time in the States, they would probably even go in greater detail of why it's so important. You know, without the rain, the farmers can't do their stuff, but without the forest, nobody can do their stuff, right? You don't have oxygen to breathe, you don't have that simplicity of just, oh, I'm alive, thank you forest, thank you trees, you know? I always suggest if you do visit Japan, don't go July. You know? It's really humid too. I was fortunate because I went in December of this last year, and also this time being that my wife is there, so we got married in a traditional wedding with the photos you all saw. It wasn't the peak of humidity yet, but you could kind of feel it clawing at the door, and it was like, get me out of here, you know? And then I go visit Florida, and that's 111, 90% humidity. Like, what is going on here, you know? Who all has been to Japan in the crowd? Okay. What seasons have you been there in? June? Okay. Spring? Anybody else?
spring and fall.
Yeah?
The rainy season.
Oh,
Oh, my.
Okay, how was your experience there?
Very humid. I never
Yeah.
felt humidity like that.
Right, that's pretty much fog then too, right?
That's how you
Yeah.
do it.
What
So-
part of Japan were you in?
Kyushu. back in-
Kyushu, okay, very nice. What were you all doing there if you don't mind me asking?
I had family there.
Oh, very cool, thank you for sharing that. That's, I wanna spend more time in that area, they have really good ramen. Yeah, I can't imagine what it must have felt like.
They had summer festivals too.
Right,
that we
especially the
went to
rain, right, and
in the
everything,
rainy
it's,
season.
I commend you for sticking through with that rain, that's a lot there. You know, someday I'll experience it, but I can wait on that one. Was it just like a big hug of humidity every day, or yeah, just like,
I've experienced humidity because I grew up in Missouri. And
Okay, yeah.
We've been to the South like Georgia and
yeah,
nothing like Japan.
I've heard
That's
that.
what I've heard.
I've heard that. I've heard Florida is like second to that, where it's like
We lived
possibly.
in Florida for a while, and that
Yeah.
It was
Not-
it
not
didn't
No?
compare.
Okay. I'll tell my buddy, I'm like, you're wrong, man. You can't be saying that to people. He's a 6th generation Floridian, so he's like, you know, he's a good friend, but I'll have to correct him now. It's like, thank you
No,
for that.
you should go.
Yeah, rainy season, they don't mess around over there. how can we take cues for seasonal living? What does anybody think about this? As you stated, you know, looking at the idea of changing colors and things, what else can we do?
Daylight.
In what way?
I love it when the days become shorter.
Okay. Do you also appreciate when they're a bit longer too?
No.
No, really? Okay. The hibernation, right? I could tell. I could tell.
Winter is my season.
I
That's
love
cool.
winter
That's good.
too.
That's good.
Wonderful.
What else do we see with, you know, cues for seasonal living? You know, do we see certain crops planted at certain times? Do we see farmers markets having different produce or baked goods, right? Pumpkins, squash, you know, all the above, right? How do we take inspiration from Japan with that and turn it over into here? As you stated earlier, you know, Matsuri, right? Seasonal festivals, Matsuri. We have them where my wife is from, they have them every day. I was like, what? Why did we go? She's like, oh, it didn't start till July. I was like, okay. Excuse me. Matsuri literally is for cherishing kami. Kami we would probably call spirits or God. With everything in Japan, it's centered around spirits and that exist in nature, because they are one influence into the other. For example, if you were to cut down a tree in Japan, especially a very old, dignified tree, you'd have a huge event for it. You'd have a priest come out and bless the tree. You'd have a whole ceremony thanking the tree. You have generally an event with food, and then you do the whole procedure of cutting it down by a process that's very traditional. And just as a whole respect of it all to become one with nature, and then they plant a new one in this place or around the area. I've never seen that. I've watched a documentary on it. It's quite impactful even on the screen. It's pretty amazing. And different places have different things with how they absorb nature and in turn use it. If you're more into the Ainu people in the native communities, it'll be a completely different approach to what we think of as Japan. I've not spent much time with the Ainu people, so I can't talk about that too much, nor do I want to say anything that could be incorrect. So, research for later for y'all. This is what you would find if you've ever been in the rainy seasons, right? A lot of people wearing, anybody heard the term tabi, the shoes, or ninja shoes, right? A lot of people wear those during here. These things are very heavy. You see a lot of really young guys just bright red face, and they're just yelling very loud, but it's that taiko drum in the back. Doom, 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 doom. They just feel it in their chest and it just lets it go. As I said, my wife is from Aizuwaka, Matsu, Fukushima. They are regarded as one of the best places that trained samurai for centuries in Japan. They were the last stronghold against the new government. That new government wanted more outwardly exploration. The samurai against the shogunate, whole thing, burned down the castle, horrible bloody battle, but that spirit still lives on anywhere you go in Japan. Prefecturally, it's like our states, right? Each has their own unique individual authenticity, if you will. Midwest compared to East Coast compared to West Coast, even down south. West to East, it's all different. And, you know, Texas is its own thing, so that's better. Eating seasonal fruits. So, where my wife is from, like I keep saying, is Fukushima. There's a lot of mountains. Very famous for their white pines. Very cold in winter. Very much a hibernated uniqueness about it. But you'll have vegetables from the mountain. Mountain vegetables were a big thing. When we were there in May into June, there was a local mom and pop grocery store from, I think they've had it for well over 50 years above their, underneath their house. We got a whole bag of just mountain vegetables picked that day, $8 for the whole bag, which would be about $30 here. I was just astonished, and you know, right? It's like, well, I do my own vegetables, but I can't grow these ones, but what can I grow that are native possibly to the areas we're in, right? Seasonal vegetables help promote a seasonal living, right? Those cues we're talking about. Japan, traditionally spring, strawberries, summer, edamame, fall, persimmon, beautiful trees in fall with that color too. And winter, high dose of Napa cabbage. Who here's had hot pot? Anybody? Yeah? Do you like it? Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I've had enough of it now. I really appreciate it, right? I even eat natto. I don't know if you've all had natto, but sometimes it stinks like really bad. I love it over rice. I don't know, one day it just went quick. I was like, oh yeah, I love it, let's do it, you know? This is a very significant dish, just as cabbage being the base for hot pot, plus meat and other additives, a lot of mushrooms and other vegetables. It brings that community around the table. Because when I was with my family, my in-laws, we started it in fall, because when my daughter was born last year, they came over for 3 months and helped us out. Traditionally, a woman will give birth, go home to the family's house, her mom and dad's house, and stay there until they're fully recuperated generally, and learn to rear a child by the help of the family. Well, we couldn't do that because of the distance, so they chose to come over here and work with us for 3 months. But my wife learned her cooking from her mother, which is amazing. But we had a lot of nappy cabbage. A lot of good stuff, but in that moment where we were able to surround ourselves sitting on the floor around our table, and our daughter Juniper just being in her little seat, right? We had more conversation than we would have if we wouldn't have been around this, because it's like that bonfire approach, right? A fire always brings community because there's really no silence, but wonderful conversation. Starbucks, we all know Starbucks, right? Starbucks in Japan, whew, I thought I saw Starbucks, not until you go to Tokyo and see their hotel. One moment, it's water here. Starbucks also partners with private and local coffee shops independently, and they come together and they merge and they make a example. There's a coffee company called Streamer Coffee. Gentleman studied in Seattle, Washington, in Washington State, and he won these big awards, influenced by many things, but the barista competitions, he won a lot of them. Went back to Japan, opened his own stuff. Really good coffee. I had it about 10 years ago when I first went the first time, before I even knew who my wife was. And I was told by a good friend that Starbucks had reached out to him to make a specific Streamer Starbucks coffee cooperative coffee shop. I never got to visit it. I don't know if it survived 2020, but I heard it was a very unique experience in regards to having that independent, not grungy feel, but that idea of just like DIY with the corporate little flavoring. And so this is a very big Japanese thing. Japan Starbucks, as whoever has been to Japan has experienced these entities. Who's here been to Denny's in Japan? Did anybody go to Denny's? Okay, you gotta go to Denny's. I kid you not. It sounds funny, I know, but I went to Denny's this last time. They knocked the food out of the park. Like, it's almost like fine dining, if you will, with a little twist of cheaper availability. It's some of the best food I've had ever at a Denny's, and I'm still shocked about it. Their fried sauce is the best. But Starbucks will have seasonal drinks. What I mean by that is each prefecture will do its own seasonal drink as a inviting sense to welcome the seasons, welcome the time, welcome the availability of talking and creating this dynamic of let's be outside. These are just two examples. This is a melon frappuccino from Ibaraki Prefecture, and this is a rice cracker with chocolate frappuccino in Niigata. There were some other really, I don't want to say crazy, but very obscure and unique flavors. As we all know, certain palates in Japan are very unique, which is cool too. But these are just some examples of how Japan really pushes that seasonal approach. If you were to look up on Google, Starbucks seasonal drinks, they change every year. Generally around cherry blossom viewing season, like we talked about the ohanami with picnics and whatnot, they will have specific rice, they will have specific baked goods, and specific drinks that have flowers in them or make it look like pink or that whitish pink color. So you're just inundated with this seasonal life, and it's pretty amazing. I think in America we could spice it up a little bit. Come on, Starbucks, let's do our thing, How can we find inspiration in the U.S.? Just from where we're at, or where we've been? What do y'all think? Like I said, shout out if you want. Any ideas, Tim?
I was actually describing.
Oh, guys, it's like, oh crap.
Well, I mean, in terms of like food or seasonal living,
Yeah, Tim.
it's every day for me. I mean, guys, some of us in the room here live kind of work in the garden every day.
Right.
It's just part of the seasonal flow is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
See the gradual transition of the seasons, and I'm just thinking today that already we're halfway through the gardening season here.
Right.
And, the pale purple wallflowers are virtually done blooming.
You ready to rake those leaves soon?
Not really. Not really yet, but
backs of the grasses, yeah. No, and thank you for sharing that, because that's also a very roundabout way to be just, you're in it all the time. But you can also be in it, but do you fully experience it too, right? Guilty as charged myself, you know. But with these questions, you know, what plants can we use to bring awareness, or trees or shrubs? What do you all think about when you see, right, we said nature, wintertime, naked, not a lot of color, but there are certain things that promote a good color base, right? And then we go to spring and lots of flowers and everything else. One constant that I love in my life is the winterberry. Provides seasonal things for animals, all seasonal interests, and it's a lovely plant, correctly on snow. Maybe use it more here, I don't know. But these also give, like I said, a lot to just unique views for your garden. We'll discuss some ideas with landscaping and design if you all choose to do something on your own or have a friend that's looking for something. Japan equals community. What I mean by that, as it stated here, Japan as a society is a communal society, or also known as a groupthink culture. Within the experience I've had and the people who've been there, I'm sure you can relate as well, that when you see Japan and Japanese people, and I'm not singling them out, but in this regard, it's very unique to their culture, that it's a very group-oriented thought in regards to, if I do this, what's the ripple effect gonna be for these next people in my circle, or even in my community? I think we used to have a good majority of this in the States. Things have happened and transpired to where it's kind of dwindling now. Maybe we can get it back, you know? 2020's happened, where can we pick up the pieces that fell through, right? This right here, if you have the chance to go back anytime soon, as Jeffrey said, you're going in February next year, maybe take a note of how you experience it this time, because every time will be different, right? Just like going through the garden here. See how you experience your influence with being around the people who live there, because that will definitely give you a different interpretation of what you think maybe for yourself in Japan, or how you interact with it as well. I figured too that everyone should probably try that sometime, even if you're in a different state in the United States or a different country as a whole. Influence is gained by being open and available to that change, right? Japan, where nature meets natural. Being natural or man-made, this is in Tokyo. As we've all been, who has been, you've seen the little plantings of pots everywhere, whether it be restaurants to houses to really small apartments. You know, the smallest one that I've seen is probably no bigger than this table. But they had a sure amount of pots with plants in it that looked lovely. You know, all different colors, all different sizes. This was in a hotel that my wife and I and daughter stayed at in December, around Narita. This was their rock stone garden right in the center of their foyer, or foyer, if you want to have semantics. But this actually goes even around more, and it's so engaging because they have a huge wide open window view from their eating space that it allows you to see that access without being diverted. And I was very taken aback by that, because when was the last time we were able to kind of have that unobstructed view, even in our own house, right? What about if we go to a restaurant? What about if we go to a park? Sometimes we have new things that are just, well, why is that there? I can't see the tree behind it. Or, you know, why is that stream disconnected now? You know, some things to take with you and think about. Like I said, big cities, Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto. There are other cities too, of course, but these are the main three that a lot of people think about. Great food here, okay, food there, my personal opinion. Kyoto, great traditional food. I would say Kyoto is the top runner as far as influencing nature with living in a city. Mind you, this used to be the old capital, and now what we know as Tokyo is the new capital, of course, for many, many years now. Nature influenced by that is that if you go to Kyoto, or Kyoto, sorry, if my wife is here, she'd be like, "Hey, give me the look." Say it right. With Kyoto, they've done a way where they can influence their living just by corresponding to the changes seasonally, because they've built their city around it. Traditionally, that's also a big part of that culture identity, right? I know I'm a broken record as I am, ask my clients with massage, like, you say the same stuff. I'm like, yeah, but until you get it, you get it. And then you get it more. With all that said, it still provides nature to be fully acknowledged. if we're ready to be able to see it. You know, 2020 was very hard on Japan. Like I said, I've been twice now in the last year or so, and I didn't think the influence of 2020 would still be grappling. But in certain industries such as hospitality or other things, there's a shortage of people, similarly here. But nobody's forgotten their influence with how they're affected in their groupthink culture of like still being sincere, still being honest, and still living with the seasons. What are other ways to live seasonally? Tim, as you discussed, you know, yourself with your experience in the garden here and your time spent within this environment. As I said earlier, you know, if you're thinking about creating a landscape or know anyone doing that, simple rule I follow is this. Oh, yeah. What will a landscape look like naked in winter? If you don't like your landscape in winter, you're gonna have to look at it for a whole another year. So if you're planning to do any redesign or any design work at all, think of how that looks out your windows when there's no foliage. Because if that just catches your eye, you're like, oh wow, why did I put that there? Well, it's right, spring it looks so much better because I had flowers or I had foliage. Like I said, influence your friends in a positive way. If they're thinking of redoing their landscape or anything, have them picture it in winter, because we all know what winter looks like. And it can look beautiful or it can look okay. Or the word nice, I don't like nice. I like that, you know.
It also depends on the landscapers, because the landscapers
True.
just like shear it down.
True.
We keep it up until springtime and.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I commend you on that. A lot of people have a good idea about doing that, but they never take charge. How long have you been practicing that? The whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice. What brought that upon to want to integrate that or practice that?
Well, we put in a lot of, first we put a lot of native plants in.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, well, that, you know, keep the seeds there for the animals and let the animals, then the stalks could be for insects.
Yeah.
So why take it down? And then we wait at the latest in spring to cut it down finally. So we're not injuring any insects that are in the stalks.
That's I really appreciate that forward thinking. That's a big discussion I have with a lot of people in my program. They always call me the guy from Oregon or the bonsai guy or the dad because my daughter. But there's a lot of people that have that influence, and even in horticulture school, having trouble implementing it. Be as it may, busy schedules or whatnot, or it's just nicer to sit on the couch when there's snow outside, you know, in a big comfy sweater, in hibernation as you stated, right? No, I thank you for sharing that, because that's one thing I try to relay to my clients all the time.
But I think the landscapers around here, the professional ones, you hire them and in fall, they cut everything down
Yeah.
and it's,
Yeah.
I guess, cause they make their,
The landscapers
Money,
that are coming up that I've met, I will say specifically from Ohio, but people I've met just even today through being introduced to them, have been in this essence that, like you're doing, you know, how can we establish this better perspective for our clients, but also better our involvement with our own work? Because yeah, it's super simple to stuff, shear it down, but why not take the influence of being like, that's pretty cool, maybe I should tie that shoot of grass up in that ribbon like some people do, and then I can see it as another entity and then cut it down after Christmas, right? Or maybe put a Santa Claus hat on top of it or something, you know?
I think a lot of people like the beautiful green grass and have everything, you know, like the edges cut perfectly and in winter to make sure that, you know, there's nothing like scraggly, so cut everything down, make everything look neat and perfect and everything.
Organized, right?
Yeah.
Organized
Make it-
chaos. Yeah, things are changing, right? I know a lot of landscape architects now and a lot of landscape designers in and out of school, in the program at Ohio State or other campuses around the country. The old ways of doing certain things are changing for the better, because we're being influenced by proper technique, proper appreciation, and proper care. And with all those, it should amount to something very beautiful, ideally. Just don't have any tornadoes. Another way to do that is plant your own vegetable garden. I know I've talked to a few people today out here. Jeff, we discussed that as well. You planted your own vegetables, is that correct? Or you didn't have time? No? Okay, sorry. So many people came today with the Donor Thursday. Beautiful conversations, but a lot of faces, a lot of names. Or a flower garden. You know, some people say, I'm not good at vegetables. I'm like, yeah, but you can plant seeds, right? Throw them on the ground and let them bloom. Brings more pollinators, honeybees. We all need those to survive. Another big one is earthworms too, right? If we have a healthy soil, we have a good replenished earthworm population. We don't always think about what's underground as much as we should. Guilty as charged myself until I went to school. Nature and mental health. What does this bring for you all? When you hear the word mental health, what do people get? Maybe a preconceived notion or an idea. Anybody want to share their thoughts?
When you're in nature, it's just, there's a peace. It just, you just feel it come on your body.
Right. Do you, if it's okay to ask, and you don't have to answer, but when you have a time of trouble or unease, do you find yourself going out into nature or just stepping barefoot in grass?
Just out into nature,
Yeah.
in the trees.
Does that almost immediately just elicit this
Yes.
calmness? I appreciate you sharing that, thank you. No, and like I said, I really appreciate you all as we're a small group here today, but more conversation, more intimate approach here today. Cheating yoku. Has anybody ever heard of this expression? What do we know about it? See you shaking
It's
your
a way
head.
to walk meditatively and experience
Yeah.
all of nature.
Yeah, yeah. Literally, the definition that I saw translated from Japanese is forest bathing, as you said. You know, being one within nature and letting it encompass you. Example: today there was two women that came up to me. I don't know if any of you were here earlier, but I was working on my bonsai trees over on the floating dock on our reflection pond underneath the shade, which was a very musical chair approach with the sun coming in and out each way, but good times. The two women were talking with me as I was having many conversations today. The one that really struck me was, I didn't get her name, but she said it was her first time at the garden. And she said to me, I don't feel this calmness or patience that everyone's talking about. And I was like, is it your first time? She's like, yeah. I'm like, that's no problem. That's fully valid to experience it that way because it's your first time. You don't know what you're experiencing because you haven't seen it through the changes of yourself. As each time you come back, you're gonna experience it different. Whether it be seasonally or even a difference in hours. Because time of light, time of day, cloud cover or not, it's gonna influence you different. She's like, oh, I didn't think about that. But the thing that really stuck out to me, as we discussed this earlier, you know, and some people in the back here, she said to me, she's like, the thing I did notice though, there's a lot of subtleties here. I was like, wow, you picked up on that your first time? She's like, yeah. And I was like, I commend you on that ability. She's like, why? I'm like, because most people don't even pick that up for a very long time. As we all know the subtleties of a Japanese garden, especially if you work here. She felt she's like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm like, okay, I'm like, yeah, keep going, walk tall, you know? But I did tell her, with the influence of being bathed in this situation or example, I said, if you want to feel patience or calmness, go stand in front of the 3 or 4 tiered waterfall at the tea house over there, or whichever way we're at. And she's like, okay. And I was like, go stand there for a good 4 to 5 minutes. Just look at the water and be encompassed by that. Get some of the mist on you, just hear that noise. And then I told her, and then that should elicit a response to be able to see the tea house with fresh eyes. And she asked why. And I said, because when you're available to have no consideration for outside awareness of noise, your brain will let you feel what you need to see and understand. She's like, thank you. I was like, yeah, no problem. Keep coming back, you know? And I also influenced everything with that. Come each season of every year, if you can. This is a beautiful sanctuary. Like I said, I'm just the one in Portland, Oregon, because I've been there many times, you know? And when Tim reached out to me, I was like, I would love the opportunity just to come talk or just be able to just be in the garden as I have been, you know? What does the research show us about spending time in nature? There was a very big study about this term, shirin yoku, and they took subjects and exposed them into nature at certain periods of time. I'm sorry, I don't have it on here to give more information about it, but if you type it into Google Scholar or anything, it will pop up a lot of different research articles about this one topic. They took people that had high blood pressure, high heart rates, quite a high stress job or stressful life, and then influenced them by just getting them time in nature. I don't really remember if it was specifically like doing an action or just being present. But with each subject, they took their blood pressure and things in that way that they could be justifiable data points. So say they were this high, whatever you think of a number for a high blood pressure, right? Well, after their time spent in nature under this Shirin-yoku concept, forest bathing for themselves, they came out more calmer. They came out more welcoming and responsive, and their heart rates dropped, their blood pressure dropped, and they had a better view of themselves for the day. And probably, I would think, going forward for the rest of the time spent, or hopefully that week or month, and ideally the year. What I mean to say about that, though, is that when was the last time we really experienced nature in that way? 'Cause like I was saying earlier with Tim saying he works every day, but working and experiencing can be different. Because you experience work, but do you experience in nature while you're working? I was talking to some of the pruners today and yesterday, and they were saying that you get in what's called a flow state. People do it with bonsai trees, people do it with anything they're really into. But are you becoming one with the tree, or is the tree becoming one with you, right? I think that's almost the purest form of being able to live in those seasonal cues, of just by like, we're together on this, we're the same energy right now, and you're maintaining that approach for work, but you're just influenced by what the tree's telling you because you're listening. So if that concept is new to you, maybe see about how you can be influenced in your own backyard. Like, how do I approach my own trees or my shrubs, or even sitting on your deck? How do I eat my sandwich when I look at this? How do I invite friends over, you know? Interesting conversations to be had over coffee too, right? The art of conversation isn't lost, it's just that we need to revamp it, right? Some more research and studies that were done. In 2021, the EPA recorded 90% of our time is spent indoors. That is drastically
That's awful.
bad.
Yes.
When my daughter was born, Juniper was born, she had very bad jaundice. Not uncommon, but it was pretty high in regards to the levels that it was. A wonderful woman that we lovingly call Grandma Nina, was our adopted grandma in Ohio. She was our nurse who would take care of Juniper with blood draws and other things, and she gives all this wonderful knowledge. First baby, heads out here, what do we do every day, right? She said that when we go and spend some time in the sun, skin to skin with me, for dad and myself, well, dad, me, and Juniper, she'll get better faster. Sure enough, she did. You know, old time ways do still make sense in today's culture and technology. Because they had the blue lights and everything, but it wasn't doing anything fast enough that we would like. Sure enough, Mr. Sun, hey, thank you, you know. Also too, with her experience at that time outdoors, she's now a year and almost 2 months, and she's now saying words like, in Japanese, like ame, rain, and pointing outside and saying ame, ame. So she loves being outside. I do think it's probably inclination from her name, I can only hope. But since every day I would take her out into being outside and show her everything, have her touch flowers and everything, that Penn style approach of, oh, I can touch this, I can be a part of it. I have a question for you all right now. When was the last time you touched a tree? Regardless of planting it or not, just literally putting your hand against it and saying thank you. I try to do it every day because I have miniature, but you know, you're not gonna hurt the tree if you touch it lovingly. Just don't, you know, touch it, don't hurt yourself. But the idea that trees are our friends too, and nature is nature. 2022, Utah State University reported that too much screen time obviously means depression and anxiety. Who here was stuck inside a lot in 2020, right? Who here was on their phone more often than not, and that hasn't influenced your life now? I know for myself, with me being in college, I'm 35. A lot of my peers and fellow students are in their 19, 20, early 20s. They have not been able to get out of that rut. They're still stuck in that way because it's safe, I guess you could call it, or maybe just an influence of just, why change something if it doesn't need to be fixed in that way, and their mind's thinking it's okay to process that way. In a minute, I'll discuss some things I've been doing at school to help integrate positive mental change and attitudes for students that are my fellow peers. But there's a lot of research and data on these now, since 2020 as well. There's a specific study with bonsai done out of South Africa in 2020 specifically, where people who were having severe depression or anxiety episodes were given trees to work on and or take care of. And famously, as we all know with nature, they got better. What an idea, right? Going back to the natural remedies of what we can get just by being present. Like I said, broken record as I am, you know, my wife, if she was here, she'd be saying, I've heard all this before, last 5 years, oh my gosh. But it's good because in that idea that when it's ingrained and we don't even have to think about it, where you can experience it just naturally without having to be, oh man, how do I feel right now? When you already know how you feel, you'll just be like, yeah, that's what I want, you know? Populations with mental health issues. We all know someone who's had some problems, right? Depression, anxiety, whatever you wanna call it. Populations I tend to focus on, veterans. That's a very big one close to home for me. Many friends went to Iraq, my age, didn't come back the same. I have a lot of friends who are Vietnam vets in bonsai, tell me some significant stories about how this helped save their life, which I'll share later. Children, it's a very big one. Even before I had my family, I was very big on influencing children to be outdoors. I was a camp counselor. I helped run children's programs and I made children's programs. That's the new generation that needs to be influenced to take care of our society by understanding that we need to take care of ourselves and nature. You know, coworkers, neighbors, etc. We all know people in our communities that still deal with this. 2020 is a really bad time for a lot of people. But like I said, the building blocks are there to pick up and rebuild this community to be available to have this outreach. Like I said, who else? Everyone. We experience it seasonally, depression. Seasonal cues, as I say, I've seen help combat that seasonal affective disorder. I experienced that really bad in Oregon because it will rain good 7-8 months out the year, if not almost 9. But it's very dark and gloomy, almost like a mini England. So I've been told from friends who are from the UK. Mind you, you can be outdoors all year round, but it's still the influence of less vitamin D, less inviting weather because you're like, it's wet. Ugh. But being really cold here, it's like, I'd rather take the wet than the really cold, you know? Negative, no thank you. But in my experience now, living seasonally through bonsai and just other things, experiencing life again with my daughter growing up, my seasonal affective disorder personally has gotten better because I'm taking those cues that nature's giving me to be like, oh, fall, death, right? Okay, well that means spring's gonna come and I can be happy because of new things and approach and new experiences, right? Okay, yeah, just have to keep telling myself that on repeat because sometimes you get down to the dumps, you're like, yeah, everything sucks. But such is life. Like I said, my experience with community outreach and engagement. I started the first ever Bonsai Club at The Ohio State University in the history of the school. I was very shocked to see this, as bonsai in Columbus has been there since 1962 or 65 with the Columbus Bonsai Society. Mind you, I've been afforded the opportunity to get a scholarship through The Ohio State, specifically for bonsai. There was a family named the Peterbaugh. They are no longer with us now, but I appreciate them for what they've done. They had what I found out at the time, I thought it was like this mythological folklore of like, yeah, right, there's a bonsai scholarship for a student at a university, whatever. I'll be like, my luck. Sure enough, I applied for all these, one click, you apply for all these scholarships, right? Nobody has money to pay for school outright anymore. I looked at the scholarships I received. I've been working really hard, made dean's list and all that. I got a bonsai scholarship. Had it now for the last 2 years of school. And the fact is, I'm like, wait, there's a bonsai scholarship and no bonsai club? There's a disconnect here. What are we not doing? But in my influence with wanting to create the bonsai club there, I wanted to help my population of students and fellow peers. So like I said, support students' mental health and engage with nature and miniature. That's basically in our bylaws, the whole law. Because of that approach, students are busy people, right? Sometimes they're working 2 jobs just to go to school. Myself, 2 companies, my daughter, everything else. I'm not special in any way, but I'm no different than my fellow peers. Just a different lifespan and experience, being 35 compared to 20, right? Still don't know what I want to do when I grow up though. But this has been a big influence for my fellow peers who have come to the club meetings and just had the availability to spend time with these trees, or they brought their own, or they went out and purchased some from the nursery because they're like, this could be something I want to try. More words of positivity than negative I've received in regards to, I feel better after going to the club meeting, or I feel better understanding that I can bring nature to myself as opposed to, I don't have a car, or I don't have a forest to go into in my backyard. So why can't we bring it to them, right? I mean, you can do many forms in bonsai. You can make a forest where it's like, wow, I'm transported back to that tree I climbed and broke my elbow, right? Or I saw that one hanging off a cliff before when I was in wherever, it's a compounding effect of just, let's keep influencing and pushing forward. Programs to combat PTSD. This is a big one I've been focusing on for the last 5 years. I had friends who are some of the top bonsai professionals in the world that are world-renowned, studied in Japan for many years. When they asked me when I first met them, the general question is, what do you want to do in bonsai? I don't like that question, but I still ask it myself because you need to see where people are at or where their influence is or where they want to go. I said, I want to make bonsai into a therapy. I get a look like, different mindsets, different people. My influence is from how I've impacted people in a positive way through massage therapy, and any influence of volunteering my time to help at a soup kitchen anytime, you know, when you're kids and things in that way. Excuse me. As of right now, I'm working on programs for veterans at Ohio State University and active military students to combat the stresses of their life influenced by other things that are outside of school. Be that it may people who've been in wars, conflict of any kind, or even just having to go through basic training. I know a lot of people's stories are very, not the best, we'll say. I haven't been able to get off the ground yet due to a lot of red tape, especially in the university setting. But I've been able to kind of contact some outside sources for larger community groups, and we're working on that way now. Like I said, I've been afforded the opportunity to make these things happen because I have a desire to help people. These are all the bonsai societies I belong to, plus a few more. Columbus Bonsai Society, Bonsai Society of Portland, which has now 500 plus members, one of the largest bonsai clubs in the country, if not the world. Rocky Mountain Bonsai Society, Colorado, very old club. American Bonsai Society is basically what you could literally call the governing body for bonsai across the United States. I'm on the board of directors here, so I make a lot of good influence and things in that way where I bring my ideas, creating community engagement through this mental health awareness. Mind you, there's a lot of people in different aspects of hobbies or niche communities that are like, well, I want to be popular. I'm like, I don't care about that. I want to help as many people as I can. This is partially the reason I went back to school. I was doing massage full time. I don't want to say I was getting burned out, but I knew I wasn't being able to help as many people as I wanted to at one time. If you're like amazing, you probably could do like 2 people at once, but you get really tired really fast doing massage that way. Never seen it, don't try it. But I was not satisfied with my output for creating a better response for my community. Mental health, engagement. I always discuss nature in every session I have. My clients are happy now because they're like, I love talking nature with you because I learned so much, but also I get to just be giddy about when I get home and look at my own garden, what I want to do next. I'm like, yeah, let's keep going. Well, you know, let's keep that fire going. But with each one here, there's a lot of families in bonsai. Whether it be the bonsai family you create, like any hobby, you have fishing buddies, you have, if you're in Ikebana, you're gonna be, you know, influenced by that with your friends that you make that turn into family. But there's also the family units that are outside of those people. I always try to say, hey, let's bring them in. Let's show them a good time as well. Because it's not just you, it's who you're influenced by in your house, who gives you the time and who appreciates the artwork we do. Also with the influence where my family is different, because I'm in an interracial marriage, my wife being Japanese, I have to pay attention to that. I was told by a very good friend of mine named Ryan Neal, he's one of the top people in the world with bonsai. I saw him last fall in California at a very big show for the first time in Oakland. We were chatting, and I told him my idea. I was like, hey, you know, I'm kind of struck in a line here of, I don't know what I want to do with my bonsai. I said, what do you mean? Or something along those lines. Like, well, you know, we have this American approach and then the Japanese, you know, traditionalist idea. He's like, whoa. You'd be doing a disservice to your own family if you didn't choose to do both. Because you need to know both to create the respect for your wife's culture, not only your own. And that really influenced me. I'm like, okay, so I have to be representative for both identities because my wife appreciates my bonsai. She helps me water. And I don't ask for much more. But in that idea, I think we can bridge a gap there too, because there are a lot of unknowns about Japan, specifically with influence of certain niche cultures in Japan, as there's a lot. But also, how can that affect our positive outcomes in the US if we can learn to just be the group think, if I do this one thing, or this breaks, how's it gonna affect the person behind me, or how's it gonna affect the group outside, even in the next town over, right? A thing that my wife and I do even to this day now, Now we do it via Zoom. My mother is a first and second grade teacher, and it started back when she was living in around Corvallis, Oregon, which is near Eugene. So you think of University of Oregon around there, or Oregon State University, which is Corvallis. In a really small town, old logging community that had been on very hard times since the 90s because the logging went away. You couldn't cut timber, regulations for safety and everything else too. The kids in this school were one school unit for all of elementary, middle school, and high school. So everyone knew everyone. It's the kind of town you drive through, you blink, you miss it. But we started this concept of Japan Day. Japan Day being, if we can get these kids thinking outside of their own influence of this small town, that'll create a bigger response for them to be more engaged with communities, possibly go to school, maybe college, maybe even travel the world. So we've been doing this now since about probably 2016. Like I said, we do it now via Zoom. But my mom, to this day still, who has students that are entering high school, either come see her or have siblings that she's still teaching that have talked about Japan Day. And she, more often than not, gets the students who have the older siblings like, hey, Miss Faris, what's Japan Day? I've heard about this. Are we gonna do it? And she's like, who told you? And we do it. But that's when the kids are the most attentive and respectful and kind. Not that they're not other times, but
just very
they pay
Japanese.
attention. Right, and the approach too, I teach them about nature just in the most simplest form. We were discussing kids and teaching today. My mom, the first time I did it at her school where she's at now in Sandy, Oregon, at the base of Mount Hood, said that was the most attentive she's ever seen her students in the whole year. Because I had them touch the trees very softly. I said, if you have a younger brother or you have a doggy or a cat or an animal at home, you don't want to hurt it, right? Like, no. I'm like, you're gonna touch the tree really soft like you would those animals or friends you have. Okay. And I was like, has anybody ever hugged a tree? Like, yeah, everyone's, raising double hands. And I said, why don't you hug trees more? Yeah, I'll do that today. Oh yeah. And now some of those kids, like I said, have siblings. And some of the kids like, I've hugged a tree, my older brother said too. I was like, very cool. The influence is going on, right? As I stated, kids are the new generation. They're the ones that we need to invest more time in response to what we're seeing, not getting political here, but just the influence of how we can live in a greater society. With the influence of nature and the seasonal living components. Because if we teach our kids how to live seasonally, they'll live longer, healthier lives. Case in point, Japan. They have some of the most centenarians in the world. Okinawa being the Hawaii of Japan, the blue dot as they are, they have people in their 80s still climbing trees and farming every day. It's their diet-based seasonal approach. Not only that, but just the experience and then being able to calm themselves through nature, as we were discussing earlier. What ways can we spread community engagement in our local communities? I'd love to hear ideas from you all. Because with this talking point here, I want to see what I can get from you all so I can bring it back to Columbus or anywhere I go. What's helped you in your communities locally, whether it be your neighborhood, if you go to church, or you're part of Elks, or if you have any veterans in here, thank you for your service, but like VFW or anything in that way. Does anybody have anything they've ever done that's helped them or they've seen work really well? Or even at the garden, what do you guys do here?
We do quite a number of things. We work with, we have a Breathing for Vets program.
Yeah.
And with our Tai Chi teacher who's out there right now, we started that with the help of at the request of a local vet.
Yeah.
Catherine right over here works with kids with alcohol and substance abuse issues from the Rosecrans Center out here. They come in, work in the garden. Catherine takes them through, talks about principles of tea ceremony that are about ways of living actually.
Right.
And Catherine, what else do you got going?
Well, we have quite a few things. In the Path to Renewal, we work with like Youth for Christ. We worked with K-Fact, which is an empowering girls thing.
Very cool.
But also we do things like Salvation Army has a church service. The garden hosts an AA meeting on Thursday evenings.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few things that happen.
Now, for me to be able to take this back to Columbus, how easy or difficult was it to get those off the ground? Or what was the easiest one that you found to work the best?
So Rosecrans was the easiest because it's been been around for so long. So initially they were looking for community service project, and we just knew it could come to so much more, and so that program started 8 years ago. And so it's a little bit tour, a little bit work in the garden, a little bit connection to nature. So we've woven that all together. The Path to Renewal program is a book that was written by Randy Zimmerman. He's a docent, psychologist that's been here for a long time. And that was really in response to 2020, seeing the effects the garden had on people, and just reading some of the feedback on social media as well. You know, we would have like a nurse that would come, or a respiratory therapist that would come and feed the fish and buy a bag of fish food for every patient that she had to pull off a vent.
Wow.
So, you know, obviously we were aware of the impact, but seeing it.
Yeah, the influence is great, right? I appreciate you sharing those, because like I said, anything I learn from you all, I can take with me and help affect my community in a greater way. Within this, we're near the end here. Thank you for your time, really. But Japanese gardens, what I equate them to be, is nature's connection point. You can see every season, it can be influenced by every little bit. The subtleties, as that woman was telling me today that she called on the first time here, I was like, that's amazing. How do you do that, right? Why aren't we inviting more people here? Why aren't we talking about it more in our communities? Why aren't we just making an established point to be like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, call them up. Wanna come with me to the garden? Let's go hang out. We got a cafe here. I haven't gotten to eat there yet. It looks like great food,
it's
great
good.
ambiance.
It is.
But you all have this, and I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong, but I've been trying to construct this idea in Columbus, so if it sounds a little aggravated, I'm sorry. It's just a lot of that red tape, a lot of the approach of just, why would we change it? It's always worked. I'm like, well, that attitude hasn't, right? Bonsai is a seasonal practice, some quick. You have every season in your hands. I'm the crazy person that built a cold frame greenhouse. My landlord's crazy enough to follow my ideas, and now we use it as a dry storage and also a hot house for growing tomatoes and drying garlic. Each season brings a new ambiance. The maple here will turn nice, bright red orange. Leaves will fall in the autumn. The influence is there. Like I said, bringing it to people as opposed to them having to leave their wherever they're at, whether it be a retirement home, a school, or what have you. Real quick, just some steps to get you back into nature and increase your intake. Step outside your door. Step outside your door with the motivation to be present. Being present in nature, being involved with the idea of I'm here to take in this today. 2, visit your local parks. As we say, we have the garden here. Visit more often. Become a docent. Make a rule to take breaks outside. If you work in a corporate office building or even at home or whatever you're doing, make a rule to step outside. Leave your phone inside if you can, and just be out there for however much time you have available. Just be in the presence. Set up a phone alarm to go outside. Micro breaks. I tell my clients this all the time. I set them for myself when I'm doing landscaping, because you get so involved. Sometimes you need to take a step back and really readjust your influence. Be like, oh, I could do that differently. Okay, I'm glad I took that break, right? A little refresher. Start gardening or create a flower design. I know we discussed that earlier, but really, just have fun with what you're doing. Remember, nature is your friend, and nature equals health. And I thank you for your time. Appreciate it all. Thank you. Any questions? I know we covered a lot.
I was just gonna say, I raise lawn arbors.
Oh, wow. That's really
On my
cool.
front porch, and then I have the neighborhood children come and I show them the tiny little eggs and then the tiny caterpillars and then the chrysalises, and I have them help me release them.
That's really cool.
It's very cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I've known some people that tried. It's very tedious work, so I've been told. I really appreciate you doing that. That's really cool. What are the reactions of the kids you have?
Well, one little girl, I'm sitting in my backyard and I invited her down earlier to my porch, and all of a sudden I heard the doorbell and I went in the front and she was in the front porch. She said, I can't see the caterpillars. So then I sat down with her and I showed her where all the caterpillars were.
Wow. And she was probably pretty happy and went home. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah.
I was just gonna point out, it's healthier for kids to be in nature. They found that the kids nowadays have a lot more allergies than they did in the past.
Yeah.
And they think a lot of that is just because they haven't been exposed
Yep.
to all these things in nature and dirt and all the rest, and.
Well, like we saw with that research I put up there with the EPA from 2021, 90% of our time is spent indoors. Mind you, that could be skewed from 2020, but in regards now, it's been 3 years past.
And
Right.
vitamin D. Everybody, they take the vitamin D in a pill form. It is not the same. All the studies have shown it's not effective
Your
the
body doesn't break it
way
down the same way.
normal, the way natural vitamin D is, and
Yeah.
people aren't getting enough.
Yeah. Everybody, I thank you for your time. I know it was a smaller
Thank
group,
you.
a little intimate. I hope I didn't feel like I was projecting all these
No,
things at you, but I hope you all learned something or just took something to represent yourself and influence your own way. Like I said, appreciate you being here. Appreciate all who shared what they did, and I look forward to seeing you around in the future sometime. Let's meet in Japan. Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming.